Are you learning too much? Are you a content junkie? Do you listen to podcasts, read books, lots of audio books? Well, in this podcast, this brand new podcast, I want to show you how you can develop the habits and the processes so that you move your learning into implementation. So you're going to learn to implement. My name is Anthony English. And in the last year, I've read, I don't know how many books or listened to audio books around things like habits, how to build habits. I've got a few of those ones, including James Clear's Atomic Habits, great book. Ones around processes, around finances, around how to focus, and a whole lot of other things really to do with marketing, with another one on habits, to do with how to build stuff, how to create stuff, how to start a business, how to build a business, how to build an audience. You get the idea. So it kind of crosses over between the business side of things and self improvement. So lots on productivity, lots on personal finance, and really on starting a business or growing a business. But what do I have to show for it? After reading these books, listening to podcasts, I binged listened to a podcast that its episodes, some of them went 30, 40 minutes, sometimes even longer. And I listened to 100 episodes of that. And they all give tips, advice, but how do I actually implement? Now, maybe that is something that you can relate to. Maybe you know what it's like to be a lifelong learner, to be saying, hey, I want to learn about side hustles. I want to learn about growing a business. I want to learn how to be more productive, how to be less stressed, how to be less overwhelmed, how to get things done. And so maybe you've got tons and tons of ideas, but you don't implement them. You find it that those ideas just slip through the cracks. Yeah, sure, you take notes, you might highlight things, you might capture lots of ideas and bounce them off people, but you never actually implement. You sort of say, well, I can say this of myself. What do I have to show for this? Now, it's not fair for me to say I've got nothing to show for this. I have built, for example, a budgeting app for myself and for my business, for myself personally, my family, and for my business. And that's going pretty well. And I've certainly got a lot more productive in my full time job. So lots of processes there, learning how to speak to people in a different way, especially when there are situations of conflict in meetings and so on. And I've learned a lot about habits, but still I can kind of kick myself and think, oh, what have I actually done? All of these books that I can see, these books around coaching, around business, around marketing, what have I actually achieved? What difference did it make? What impact did it make? Have I even made back the money that I invested in those books, or the time that I invested in those, listening to those podcasts or audio books, reading those blogs? Well, what I'd like to share with you on this podcast is some ideas on how you can implement. In fact, it's not ideas. You're not short of ideas. What I want to offer is some really, really practical advice that you can implement pretty much straight away, because that those small steps are going to be worth a whole lot of doing things like making big dreams, or just getting more efficient with the tiny tasks and so on. Those small steps that start to build habits are going to guarantee that those ideas that you've collected, those ideas that you've had, that you've talked about, that you've thought about, don't slip through the cracks. So, in this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to move from being a lifelong learner to being an implementer, even if it's just baby steps. Okay, so that's why it's called Learn to Implement. I'm going to keep the podcast episodes short, and because I'm a really strong believer in getting small things done rather than having an attempt to be a perfectionist, I'm not starting with video. Now, I may easily move to video. I do have 3 YouTube channels. Perfectly happy to be on camera, but I'll just say, what is the easiest, simplest step that I can take to make a start here? Because there's not ideas that you lack; it's implementation. And so, I'm going to share with you 3 things now that are going to help you apply some of those many great ideas that you are thinking about learning about. Number 1 is to learn to build habits. Now that sounds like a very big thing, but in reality, habits start in with tiny steps, and they can really grow and escalate with tiny steps. So the idea of having a habit means that you don't have to focus too much on all of the decisions that you need to make when you're doing something new, because you've already got it as a habit. Similar thing, a little bit more elaborate, is to create processes, so that if I know, for example, that I'm going to do my bank reconciliation, I have a process in place. I have a methodology that I know is going to work, and that I'll be able to pretty much close off the accounts and reconcile everything and know where my money is going within 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so build habits, create processes. And then the last one is going to be a little bit of uh, a teaser, if you like, a bit of a challenge. You know how many podcasts and these self-improvement books speak about be the best version of yourself. Well, I'm going to take a different angle from that, which is, instead of saying what's the best version of myself that I want to be, try the opposite. So I'm a husband, I'm a father. If I lose my temper, I kind of kick myself, especially when I know that I just overreacted just too quickly, and it wasn't fair to one or other of my children. And so the best version of myself, yeah, okay, I like to be patient, but what I do is I say, well, this is what I don't want to be. So this is the worst version of myself. Let me say no to that. And so when you are looking at those lessons that you are learning, those podcasts you're listening to, those books that you are reading, ask, how is this helping me to move away from that terrible person, that terrible character, those terrible faults of character that I want to reject? That they're not really me. They're not really the true me. So I'd love to hear from you. Do you find that you are a lifelong learner? How do you implement things? Let's see if you can let me know in the comments on this podcast. But welcome to the podcast, and learn to implement. Anthony English is my name.